On Friday, a little release known as Maximum Football 2019 came out. This is the first comprehensive collegiate football experience we've had in a long time available for consoles. And another game happened to come out Friday, so if you're thinking maybe I wanted a pro football version of this, you're in luck. So stick around, drop a like, really help us out, get subscribed, and get that notification bell on so you can get notified of content like this. Grab a cold one, and let's party. Welcome to Access Football 2019. Much like Maximum Football, I was unaware of Access Football until this summer. Access Football is designed by a team known as Access Games. When comparing Access to Canuck Play, Access has a few more people working on the game, but not really by much. Access's team is based out of the United States, and they have had 4 games previously in the series. Steam has all of these games, but consoles have only had 18, and now this year's version, 19. That being said, 19 is the only version of this series I've played and will independently be reviewed with that consideration. At the time of this video's release, Access Football is only available on Steam and Xbox One at $29.99. Access is still going through the final approval process from Sony before the PS4 gets its release, and here's what they said on Twitter. We heard back from Sony, and they are asking for a few minor adjustments. We plan to resubmit on the 23rd. The PS4 release may be pushed back past our original 9/27 date, but if it does, it won't be much. Later they added it should be releasing soon. Also, a mobile port is planned to be released for late fall as shown here by Access in the YouTube comments of their launch trailer. On the Nintendo side of things, as I mentioned in my Maximum Football video, I was disappointed in finding out a Switch version was not happening. Much like that, Access is something I'd love to see on the Switch. However, currently we can be a little more optimistic. While they were denied last season for their console debuts, at the moment Nintendo is yet to deny them in the eShop. I mentioned that I found it strange that this was indeed Nintendo's process, and it very well could be Microsoft and Sony's as well. But Nintendo appears to be a little tighter on sports games that come through on the Switch. Now let's get some housekeeping out of the way regarding Access and Maximum. Like I and many other reviewers have pointed out, comparing Maximum to a AAA football title was and is unfair. Same here, Access deserves the same breaks as Maximum. Now, both Maximum and Access came out on the same day, but I opted to immediately talk about Maximum since everyone, myself included, has been waiting for a collegiate football experience back on consoles. Now, in all fairness, within this review, I will not be comparing Access to Maximum. Since I didn't play both games before doing my Maximum review, I want my Access review to be as independent of other experiences when it comes to how I discuss it in the same way Maximum had the privilege of. So with that being said, at some point this week, I will do a compare and contrast between the two games and offer a final opinion on if your money should go towards one or the other, and which you should pick. Be sure to get subscribed and turn on the notification bell so you know when that will happen. As with my Maximum review, I will leave timestamps in the description, so if you want to skip to certain aspects of the review, you can go ahead and do so. This review is done on the Xbox One version. I would typically prefer going PC if there's an option available, which there is, but I did have some leftover credit in my Xbox account, so I opted for the Xbox version. If a Steam sale includes Access in the future, I'll grab that. So any discussion of modding the game, which already has an amazing community by the way, will not be featured in this video since this is for the console version. So immediately off the bat, we were welcomed by a very slick and stylish menu UI. Disappointingly, you get just 2 play options, which is just an exhibition mode and franchise mode. Already no sign of a practice mode or season mode, and these 2 are important for some people and I think it's best to be brought up. Having a practice mode to get used to controls is not a bad option to have. Me personally, I'm okay with using Expedition for that exact thing, but I can see where it may upset people not having a place to play around with the controls and calling plays outside of the game situation. Some people may be turned off by the lack of a season mode in which you just play through a single season and that's it, but with the tiered standing system, which I'll go into detail when we get to the franchise, it may have an effect on that. Moving on in the UI, we'll discuss the options menu. Once you land upon it, it mentions screen resolution, which must have been an oversight to mention the console version since there is no screen resolution option to mess with. Your game will look as good as your setup will allow it to. The game features licensed music from Epidemic Sound, which keeps you from playing the game in silence. However, if you don't like the music, you have the option to turn this down, as well as a couple other sound sliders, including announcers, which I'll go nuts about when we start talking gameplay. Under the video options, you can change the camera zoom and camera height, as well as include sideline players and cheerleaders. This could have an effect on the frame rate, but I noticed nothing jarring having this included while playing. Next, you get to change the accelerated clock to where it lands, as well as the game speed and clock speed. I'll need to take plenty of time to test how these all work in relation to real time, because at those default speeds, the clocks run faster than real time, so I'd imagine turning clock speed all the way down would grant you true timing. In my 2 full games I played before beginning to write this, the injury frequency at 4 netted quite a few injuries, so I'll need to adjust that to avoid the constant injuries happening. I played with icon passing the entire time, which is what I imagine most people play with, but it is certainly awesome you're granted with 3 different choices to pass with. You're also able to tweak the penalty settings here. The frequency is fine. If anything, it may veer closer to just 1 penalty too many being called, but it wasn't crazy for what I experienced. I'll mention a problem I did have when we talk gameplay. Let's talk customization. Maximum Football promised a lot when it comes to this. So what does Axis promise when it comes to customization? Well, it's surprisingly back and forth for me personally. When it comes to the team specifically, you can edit their city and team name, but that is it. The logo cannot be touched, so with that being said, if I were to eventually want to change my team names, I'd go with a more accurate way of saying whatever their logo is. As for the uniform editor, you are greeted by this screen. Now, you get a decently detailed model of the player you're working with. This is where I hope Axis spends just a few more moments next season. You cannot change the main color of the jersey at all. Whatever you are given by Axis is what you are working with. But for what it's worth, they plan on expanding this section of the game. In the meantime, you can change the fonts and the colors of anything written, but you cannot edit anything outside the numbers and letters. Changing these colors offers an extremely terrible UI. The scrolling is tediously slow, and while you are shown a hexadecimal code next to the color, you cannot specifically enter one in, or if you can, I tried every single button combination to get there but had no luck. You also see a cursor over the color palette, but you have no way of selecting that either. You are instead relegated to the RGB sliders that move at a snail's pace and truly require patience to get what you're looking for. Also, you cannot touch the helmets at all. Well, you can change the paint finish and add a visor, but there's nothing about the helmet's design that you can alter. As for the rest of the uniform, you can mix and match pants and jersey tops to create your own alternates, but this is a feature that leaves a ton to be desired. Lastly, we'll talk about editing players. While it would be nice to have the ability to create your own player, which you do not have the ability to, you can always select a player and go nuts from there. But let's talk about selecting players, shall we? You see how I'm scrolling down, the UI doesn't follow me down there? It's because while I'm clicking down with the D-pad or the left stick, I have to use the right stick at the same time to scroll the entire list down. Having to use 2 controls to navigate the roster is a design choice that I hope to see fixed in the future. Once you get into the player editor, you are welcomed by a simple editing screen. The portrait I tried changing a few times to no luck, and as for the skin color, you can get that changed by changing between 1 and 5. Further down you see visor, sleeves, bands, and wraps, and much like basic binary, a 1 in this field turns on set equipment and 0 turns off set equipment. This is where you can also change jersey numbers and age of your players. It'd be nice to have a model stand there so you can see what changes while you are messing with this, but the options in editing is ridiculously small, so not opting to waste any time and space with creating standard models for that aspect is acceptable. Let's jump into an exhibition game. So with exhibition, you are given 4 options immediately. You can opt to play against the CPU yourself, play locally with a friend, call the plays and watch the game as the coach, and simply watch game played by the computer. Initially, I was going to show footage of the coach mode during this section of the review, but it is literally the 1-player mode which I'm about to show you, but the computer runs your plays instead. No different UI setup, just playing without actually playing the plays. So you get to choose your teams, and there are 36 to choose from, all ranging from the 3 biggest North American countries. So you have a Mexico City team, a few Canadian teams, and the rest are filled out by American teams. I'll go over all the teams when we go to franchise mode so you have an idea. When you're about to go into a game, you get welcomed by the game options menu, and this is where you'll have a chance to set your difficulty, as well as the time and weather involved with the game. Quarter length options are set to 3, 5, 7, 10, and 15 minutes. You also get to set the stadium, which is very nice to get a preview of each stadium, as well what the analysts predict will happen. I wish I had not watched anything about this game or last year's game, because if I went into this exact moment with no knowledge and I hear this...
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Atlanta, Georgia. Along with our Access Sports Network crew, I'm Dave Stevens.
I would have lost my shit right then and there. For those who don't know, and I'm assuming you have some knowledge of Access at this point, starting last season, Terry McGovern, a veteran in the voiceover business, is known as the voice of NFL 2K games, was pegged as the announcer for Access Football. To me, this is exciting because when it comes to football game announcers, the voice of my childhood was Dan Stevens. In fact, way back when I was in high school, I wrote a review for College Hoops 2K6 on Game FAQs and mentioned how finding Dan Stevens within the training videos of that game was a great moment for me. Now, admittedly, this is where my self-hype for Dave Stevens comes to an end. My guess is he was given a set of lines to record and that was about it. Which I understand, this is an indie title and they probably didn't have the means to make the sound entirely fluid. Because the way the announcing is cut together, it is quite rough, but it is nice to have that familiar voice along with the action as well as announcing in an indie game. There's some solid effort with that aspect. The coin toss UI is simple and elegant, it works, and I still hate that Madden no longer includes it, but whatever, moving on. Immediately looking at the field, it looks pretty good. The surroundings, however, looks rather basic, and the fact that the stadium is only half full is quite odd. I can see why that may take a toll on the game memory-wise, but 8-bit games had no problem making the stadium look full, so no reason why they couldn't do that here. An awesome touch I play with rather early here is the option to tweak my depth chart within the play calling UI. This is an awesome feature that gets me to somewhere I may want to go in a hurry. Speaking of the play calling UI, it is clean, easy to read, and sleek like the rest of the graphic overlays. While we are on the topic of graphic overlays, the score overlay looks clean. I can't put my finger on where it may take inspiration from, but it has a familiar yet unique feel to it. Axis also deserves praise for the in-game stat overlays. After certain pass plays or run plays, in the bottom corner you'll see the game total for a specific player. I'm a huge fan of getting stats within a game, so Axis hit the right notes with me when they include that a little bit. We start off the game playing defense. There are 2 moves while being blocked to help you shed said block. Sometimes you may not need to shed a block as a whole through the B gap opens up quite easily here. But that is something that can happen. When it comes to playing against the rush, I enjoy this game quite a bit. Now, over recent years I've tried to take control of the secondary or linebackers in Madden in a way to stop getting thrown all over in those games. So naturally I want to try the same thing in Axis, but playing pass defense in Axis is next to impossible for me. Perhaps it'll take adjusting, or maybe the game just needs some updates to its defensive gameplay. Defenders cannot defend passes in stride, so if I'm trying to go on the run to deflect the ball, my defender will stop in his tracks where he's at and try to deflect from there. Naturally, if the receiver is getting hit in stride, this will leave him wide open. In fact, this cost me my first game in franchise mode, which I'll show as I talk about this here. I've only played a couple games, so I might be able to chalk it up to that, but I think I'm onto something here regarding this. I mentioned something penalty-wise I'd be showing earlier, and well, here it is. Something is going on with encroachment that needs to be addressed. I can cheese my way closer to the quarterback so you can see here and avoid any kind of penalty being called. This is something I hope is being brought to light to the development team and seems like an easy exploit that could be fixed. Also on this exact subject, you are given the option to change your team's strategies pre-snap. Trying to do this will cause your player to move and potentially be offsides. In fact, this is how I found out I can sneak my way past the line of scrimmage without being called. Bringing up this menu needs a forfeit move in your player, otherwise why would I risk using it? Now while it takes a little bit for me to take off, and you'll see it in my franchise gameplay, the offense in this game can be ridiculously easy to play. I feel like I average at least 7 yards per rush, and if I wait long enough, I can hit long passes pretty regularly. Also, running the quarterback is way too easy and makes me feel like I'm playing with a Bic in Madden 2004. That being said, I've always been a fan of running in football games, so while it is nice to be able to exploit the game running the ball, I feel like I'm cheesing the game too hard by running the ball at times. But let's be honest, that's how I feel when it comes to the offense as a whole. Passing, I feel there's a bit more balance when playing against a computer because I will get intercepted when I screw the timing of a pass up. If the defender happens to be defending a post route and I try to throw to my receiver before he breaks, the defender won't hesitate jumping in front of the ball and getting himself a takeaway. I've yet to experience a fumble offensively or defensively for that matter, so I can't even comment on that. I have made many boneheaded runs with my quarterback in my short time that should have resulted in fumbles, so perhaps the fumble frequency could be tweaked within Axis's coding. How about special teams? Kicking the ball? Well, I hate it and love it. It's a familiar UI with a way to aim your kick and a power meter that slides up and down that requires timing, which I love that concept. I also love that you know why or why not a kick will be made. That being said, kicking in this game is way too easy, which is odd considering the computer missed the first 3 point-after touchdown attempts I have ever seen them attempt. I just hope the RNG gods were not in their favor and it just happened to put them at 3 consecutive misses, but it's very odd to see that. Punting works the exact same way, so nothing more needs to be added there. Returning kicks seems fairly straightforward. I haven't been able to cheese my way into a return touchdown, but it seems if I hit my lanes just perfectly and spare my turbo properly, I could take one back to the house in due time. Overall, my initial gameplay impressions weren't too bad. Both games I played in full came down to the last possession, so I had fun in that regard. The balance between my ability and the CPU seemed just right, and the exhibition game I played was on normal difficulty while my franchise game was on All-Star. Speaking of franchise, let's get into that because that's why people are here for Axis Football. You get to have 3 save files for this game, and as promised, here's a rundown of all the teams. Some show clear inspiration from their NFL counterparts, while others are very unique to their home turf. You get a quick look at their best players and what type of offense and defense to utilize. Right off the bat, you get welcomed by a dashboard that allows you to jump into the game, coach, spectate, or simulate it. You also get a screen to check out the schedule as well as the standings. Now, the standings provide your biggest reason for replayability, which I absolutely love. Now, perhaps someone with tier standings experience can tell me, because I have no idea what wins and losses grant you in the plus-minus column. I tried tracking it week to week when I eventually sim a season, but I still didn't see a pattern. Anyway, here's what you get in the tiered system. As you can see, the top 4 teams in Tier 3 have green boxes next to them. When you reach the end of the season, those 4 teams will meet a playoff with each other. The winner of that will win the respective tier's championship, which in this case is the Contenders Cup. Tier 2 gets the Challengers Cup and Tier 1 gets the Championship Cup. When you are in Tier 3 or Tier 2, if you win your tier's championship, you play against the next tier's last place team. If the lower tier team wins, they move into that tier, and the loser moves down in tiers. If the higher tier team wins, they stay put. This provides excellent incentive to win every season and avoid the worst standings. Speaking of standings, when I did a simulation to test how the tiered system works as well as the drafting, I noticed the Champions Cup winner, which was Baltimore, didn't have the last pick. Not sure if this was a design flaw or done intentionally, but that was odd to see. Now, elsewhere in franchise, you get a plethora of options. One of these options is the ability to change how practices are conducted. From changing the amount of time spent in studying film to the amount of conditioning drills, the choice is yours. This will affect team morale among other aspects throughout your franchise. Play with this and see what you can do for your team. Always loved the deep aspects of owner mode that Madden used to give you, which included relocation, changes in team name, setting concession prices, and much more. So seeing some of these aspects brought into Access was awesome to see. Some of these options include updates to the team's facility as well as additional amenities. This could include restrooms, buses, spas, and even luxury boxes. Deciding to install or repair facilities will have an effect on your team or your franchise. Be careful on what you spend your money on, as you don't want to handicap your ability to re-sign players come the offseason. This is why an in-depth franchise mode is so appealing, because this creates a very immersive role-playing experience within a sports environment. The only immediate upgrade I started off with was the luxury seating. I want to make sure high-end fans want to enjoy games in Winnipeg, so if I want more of their money to come through, I need to show some accommodation to them. I'd love to see the immediate effect this will have or some way to track it, but perhaps in future updates we could see that. We get a peek at the financial report for the entire franchise as a whole, but it would be nice to see a rolling week-to-week update of this. This area of franchise has plenty to explore and will require time and thought to decide which is worth your money and which can be held off for the time being. What would franchise be without the ability to hire and fire the coaching staff? This area shows amazing detail as you get to see each individual coach's career records as well as their experience as a coach. This is a great touch to the detail that is franchise mode. You even get pictures of the coaches as well. A little unnecessary, but a nice touch to add to the depth of your franchise. Outside of your main coaches, you also get to pick and choose your position coaches and 4 scouts. Of most interest to those mostly watching, you get scouts for 4 different regions: the West, Central, Northeast, and Southeast. Now within the scouting, you get to see all the upcoming players to be eligible in the next draft. For each region scouts, you can have them all focusing on 3 different position groups. This is a nice way to narrow down specific positions for specific scouts. Now within this, you get 3 scout points to choose from. When you use a scout point, you get a more pinpointed idea of what their overall will be. As you can see here, I decided to scout Eugene Torres, a defensive lineman in the Western region. When you use the scout point, the scout percentage goes up to almost completion and you see the estimated overall change. Further scouting gives us a clear view of the prospect's overall potential. This is a great tool to utilize when you're looking at building up your future within your franchise. Lastly, when you go to pick a game or franchise, everything remains the same, so nothing to report within the confines of that. And for those interested in the simming aspect of the game, simming, as far as I can tell, only works on a week-to-week basis. Simming said weeks takes only a couple seconds, so you get to the offseason in less than 5 minutes with no problem. You're also able to spectate the playoff games you're not a part of, which, if you're into that sort of thing, this will please you. So, what are my first impressions? Well, kind of like I said in my Maximum Football review, for an indie football game, this is pretty good. The team decided to focus their attention to round out their franchise mode this season, and they have made promises to make adjustments to their gameplay a focal point of Access Football 2020. The game's AI seems to favor offensive shootouts in the end over anything, as I feel the offense shows some significantly easy ways to exploit the AI. Long term, this needs fixing to make me feel like I haven't gotten good at this game really fast, or defensively really bad really fast. Defensively, it is truly hard to get a grasp on being consistently good. Defending the pass is just downright abysmal and needs work. As I said already, defend and run is the most enjoyable aspect of playing defense. Now, here we are again to the moment of truth. Is this worth your $30? Kind of like Maximum Football, this is a yes and no answer. When you do the unfair comparison to Madden, Access has a lot of work ahead of itself. The game balancing and rough physics shown throughout needs some fine tuning. And I'm always willing to give games like this and Maximum Football a pass in the graphics, because I feel a game based on solid gameplay will allow for the lack of great graphical detail in player models and stadiums, etc. If Access tweaks the AI's game balance and provides a complete defensive experience and an offensive experience with a challenge to it, we'd be looking at a great true alternative in the football landscape. Access has the aspiration to be a truly deep franchise-based football game, and for someone who loves that aspect of sports sims, Access has my vote and support. Which leads me into why it is worth $30. You are showing your support for the future development of this franchise, and you can get your money's worth out of diving into the scouting, uniform tweaking, and drafting aspect this game allows for. The tiered system provides replayability in a way I cannot get with Madden. I win the Super Bowl in year 1, then what? With Access, year 3 is the earliest I can consider the best, and that is what's going to keep me coming back. So if you're looking for a PC or console alternative to Madden when it comes to pro football, perhaps Access Football 2019 is exactly what you've been looking for. So that was Access Football 2019. What did you think of it? Was this a day one purchase for you the other day? Is it something you're thinking about buying now? Or is this just another indie football game that is just not getting your attention in the way you want it to? Leave your thoughts below, drop a like, really help us out, get subscribed, turn that notification bell on, because then you'll get notified of awesome content like this. And of course, at me on Twitter, @PartyBall. And as always, thank you, and party on.